This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio. We're on our flagship station over here on 790 KABC and iHeartRadio. We're also on a bunch of other stations, Talk Radio 570 KVI, FM News 101 KXL Portland, Oregon, and AM 1370 The Cast, Astoria, Oregon. But also you can go to the World Wide Web and watch us and go to KLEANradio.com. That's clean with a K. Click on our live feed. And you could look at what I look like tonight, but not really Andrew, since Andrew is reporting live from New Orleans.
Hey, Judah, how's it going?
It's good. I heard you went down there to watch the Saints game, but then you realized they were playing in Philadelphia.
Yeah, not exactly, but yeah, I was down here for some other reasons. But yeah, I got stuck here. My plane decided it didn't want to move, so I had to stay another night.
It's better than being in mid-flight and your plane deciding it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the fuel pump didn't work. I was like, well, that's not good.
So we'd like to welcome everybody out there, and Andrew Spanswick is pretty much knows a lot about everything when it comes to mental health and addiction. And I got to tell you, you did a really interesting story the other day on Kudlow.
Yeah, it was an interesting interview with Senator Patrick Kennedy and some guy from High Times.
That's quite the eclectic.
Yeah, it was. It was interesting just to hear Kennedy's sort of typical. We should just ban this drug, and this is a problem. And
well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was about? Because we're talking about it was about obviously the legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, legalization of marijuana in Colorado, and it was one of their segments on his show, and they were talking about how crazy it was getting, and then there was all these people coming out against recreational legalization of marijuana, and I made the point that we should have regulated sales, and that clearly anybody that wants to get marijuana these days can get it, so you might as well at least put regulations in place. And I said the biggest failure is that we've gone ahead and done this. We've legalized it, and we're legalizing it. And New York today is talking about, New York State is talking about legalizing it, but nobody's really putting in the proper regulations prior to legalizing it.
Right.
So, the amount of marijuana you can buy in Colorado is ridiculous. You can buy an ounce per person per location each day.
So there's two things to what you're saying, sort of, because I agree with you. Like we always say on the show, we're not the temperance movement. We're not like that with alcohol, so we're not like that with pot. But the problem is we don't have rehab set up for the issues that could come.
Yeah, not only rehabs, but nobody has even thought about how to deal with the tax. They just tax it, and then the money's going into the general tax pool. So you
mean in America right now, we set up a program and we don't know how it's going to work? I am shocked, Andrew Spanswick. You heard it here first. And to everybody out there listening, that's Andrew. Buddy is actually in the studio tonight, Andrew, because I needed somebody to stare at. I'm not as talented as you.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
So Delmer Buddy Totten is in studio.
Hello. How's it going, Andrew?
Good.
Buddy, were you a pothead?
I was indeed.
Then we don't want to talk to you. So give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Andrew, there's two things in life I really can't stand. One of them is bathrooms without partitions. And the second is potheads.
There's really not much difference there.
It's true.
But I really think this is a huge issue that's really going to abound right now.
Yeah, it's clear that marijuana is going to be legal in the vast majority of states, and probably the federal government's going to step back at some point and take their preemptive laws off. Hopefully that will decrease the costs of the war on drugs. But more importantly, I'm hoping that, and we've seen in articles today that Congress is now looking at minimum sentencing laws against drug use. So hopefully we're going to start decriminalizing a lot of drug addicts' behaviors for possession and distribution, and also start emptying the prisons of people also that are self-medicating that are mentally ill. So I see this as a positive step if, and this is with a big if, that we also don't see this as just, we're going to spend less money, but we're going to divert funds also into working on addiction and mental health issues.
By the way, if anybody out there's listening, you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. So we have an amazing Facebook community, and you can go to facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. And today, Andrew decided to post a comment, a question to our fans, which was somewhat funny, but we were doing it sort of in a comical way. Why don't you tell
it was sort of an experiment to see if people would respond more to questions about kittens and dogs than they do about people.
Right.
And so we put a post up there saying, is it okay to blow marijuana smoke into a kitten or a cat or a dog's face? And I think we got the most remarks ever.
We got a lot of comments, and you know what's really funny? Since we posted that, I've had a couple people tell me these really bad stories about their dogs eating their pot.
Yeah, did you read the one about the parrot?
Yeah.
Or whatever? The woman blew smoke into her parrot's face and it died? It's like, wow.
Yeah, so, it's something to think about.
Yeah, I think, it's funny because we don't really know, there are no warning labels on retail marijuana or medical marijuana for that point. We don't really know how much THC is in each type that's sold. And for the most part, people don't know all the warnings of, what is safe and what isn't safe with marijuana. So
I want to write the warning label. I really want to be the creator of the warning label.
And what will it say? Just stay away.
It would be like, if you're paranoid, don't use. If you have any sort of eating issues, don't use.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it creates both of those.
Right. And I don't think people understand that. You're right. I think that's an extremely important thing. I would love to hear from everybody out there on this subject. So give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. It almost feels like there hasn't been enough dialogue about this, Andrew.
Yeah, I think the question of legalization versus keeping it illegal has been dominant without really people... And so they have to get a yes or no vote. And a lot of the votes that come up before the states are basically legalize or don't legalize. So there hasn't been a lot of time or process or thought put into how we're going to regulate, how we're going to tax, what the tax money is going to be used for. And of course, when you just tax something and put the money in the general fund, we know what happens.
Nothing.
Politicians use it for their own special interests instead of them being blocked or specified funds to, take care of the problems that are secondary to where the revenues come from.
Buddy, what are your thoughts on this? As a former pot smoker, former of a few things, but one of them, what are your thoughts on the legalization of pot?
Well, I happen to agree with Andrew. I totally agree that people who desire to smoke marijuana are already smoking it, and it's already out there. And I think it needs to be, I agree, more thought needs to be put into regulating it. And if we are going to tax it, we should be able to have some say or control over where that money is going to go. And I think, if we're going to tax tobacco, which we have, and to funnel that money back into, health, and, then we need to do the same for marijuana. I mean, obviously, you're smoking a substance and you're ingesting it into your lungs. It's common sense that it's physically on your body, it's not the healthiest thing you could be doing.
But Andrew, that's something to talk about too, is about how addictive marijuana is, because people think it's not an addictive drug.
Well, we know that, nicotine in cigarettes is one of the most addictive drugs. I mean, it's up there with heroin. So, you look at the active substances in marijuana and just the fact that you're smoking it. I mean, we've sort of as a society gotten used to people smoking cigarettes. But smoking something, any kind of substance, is a pretty extreme way of delivering it to your system very quickly, because through the lungs you're basically absorbing the chemicals very quickly versus ingesting it. You can see that with edible marijuana versus smoking marijuana. When you smoke something, you have a much quicker high, and it wears off quicker. But you eat something and it stays in your body longer, and you have a longer, more deep sort of high. And so this is another thing that people don't realize either, that the way you use these drugs can affect how they affect you as well. So the people that are eating it are definitely getting it. Are they getting a different high, or than somebody that smokes it, or? Well, not only are they getting different high, but it's actually more dangerous. There actually have been documented cases of people dying from eating hashish, which is a form of marijuana. So, that's probably, smoking it is a little less dangerous, although my argument is that smoking it impairs your judgment greatly. And one of the things that hasn't been tracked yet, and I was actually talking with Sanjay Gupta about this at CNN a couple months ago in the green room, when he did his special on marijuana. He talked very clearly. I asked him, did you do any studies or find any studies on a correlation between accidents and marijuana smoking? And he said there wasn't any data out there.
Right.
But I can't imagine that we're not going to start seeing, larger and larger instances of people, not only in having car accidents, but also just general accidents in general, all sorts of types of accidents.
And if you just tuned in, by the way, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. That's Andrew Spanswick. Buddy Totten is his stand-in tonight. Give us a call at 800-222-5222.
A visual stand-in?
Yeah, he is. I need to say he's got a beard. He's growing a beard, Andrew. So it's sort of it's 800-222-5222. Let us know what you think. And because I think these are so many issues, Andrew, that are going to be coming big, because obviously it's Colorado now. What's the next state after that? Obviously, like you said, New York State wants to do it. And
New York's talking about it now. I mean, we've already got it up in Washington. Oregon's pretty open. California's got medicinal marijuana. So, several states now that are already legalizing it. And it's just a matter of time before the federal government is going to have to address it. So
I'm amazed that the potheads got out to vote, because that speaks volumes. But, when you get potheads excited, they're a group.
It's definitely a culture, right? I mean, it's definitely a drug that has a culture that goes along with it.
Right. You don't see people that are like, well, and there really is. There's a different culture in this addiction or this thing of getting
use of the substance.
Right.
Yeah, I think America's definitely evolved. I mean, marijuana has such a interesting history. If you go back, it was originally outlawed because of racism, really. The government believed that Mexican workers were lazy and not working hard, and that if they outlawed marijuana, that it would stop the scourge of lazy Mexicans and not doing their job.
And have you just turned on the radio, Andrew? That could sound really bad.
It could sound really bad. Well, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And it's bad that that's the reason that it was outlawed. But then it was put into a Schedule I drug by Nixon during the Vietnam War, and he saw it as a sign of rebelliousness and counterculture. So he put it up right there with the most addictive and harmful substances, which it clearly isn't. So that's why you have people with huge sentences for distribution for marijuana.
Right.
And that's where the fair sentencing laws are starting to come back in, and people are starting to look at those and say, hey, this guy got a third strike on, dealing an ounce of marijuana, and he's got 20 years in jail. Is that really a fair sentence?
Horrible.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio, so give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're actually having a discussion tonight about marijuana. Some of the I sound like a 90-year-old man when I say that, Andrew, by the way. It's like, I'm like one of those people that I can't say weed and it sounds good, or marijuana, or ganja.
The pot.
Or the pot. Right. I sound like an 80-year-old person, but these are discussions that we're going to have to have, because...
Dude, you are 69. So,
thank you. My age was never supposed to be divulged. Let's go to our favorite caller in Oregon. I just want to see how he's doing. Todd, how you doing up there in the One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest asylum in Oregon?
It's not too bad. We had a death here.
Oh, no.
Oh, at the institution?
Chris Crawford died.
You don't have to say the name, so...
Yeah, he was a very well-known mental patient here for 22 years.
Wow. I'm sorry for your loss.
He was in here for bad charges. And he gambled, a compulsive gambler on sports, and monopolized the TVs. And
So, Todd, how you doing this week?
He helped people escape. He escaped once.
So, Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know.
It sounds like
I have mixed up emotions from it, really. I don't know whether to be angry or sad,
Wow. Andrew, why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because I think sometimes when people are, Todd's been in an institution for quite a while, but a lot of people face this, when they're in rehab or they're starting, I posted this actually on Facebook the other days, that, don't worry about getting in touch with your emotions. When they're ready, they'll get in touch with you.
Well, that's true. Also, I think that, when you're in an institution, you're with a high-risk population, so there is a lot more death. I mean, we see that with people coming out of rehab that overdose, or people that overdose before they get into rehab that we, know are trying to help. In mental health, there's a lot of suicide, especially even when people are medicated. They realized how sick they'd been. We did a lot of work with schizophrenics back in the 90s, and as the antipsychotics got better, we found that a lot of people that had long-term schizophrenia would take the medication, get better, and then actually get suicidal ideation because they had realized how sick they had been. So, these are issues that are very difficult. And grief is something that's very difficult to deal with, and it's something that comes in stages, and you have to just work your way through it. It's not something you can just kind of speed your way through. You have to let it come as it comes and then deal with each stage as it comes.
Todd, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, well, I talked to the dude, and I said, hey, man, you're looking really rough. He goes, well, they just put me on a bunch of Valium. And next day, he's dead. They had a code blue here at 8:30 in the morning, and he was gone. So I don't know what happened. Someone said he shaved his eyebrows off. I mean, kind of weird. Like he was requesting a lot of Mountain Dews down at the cafe, trying to get people to buy him some pop, and just real bizarre behavior. He was like not really mentally ill, but just kind of eccentric.
That's,
It sounds like
Really,
he had
I don't think he had a mental illness diagnosis.
Well, it sounds like he was bipolar, so he's probably had some sort of manic phase, and it sounds, I don't know him, but it sounds like he probably had a heart attack or something.
well, Todd, the most important thing is you taking care of you, because I know you still have quite the long, stint left over there.
Yeah. I'm starting college tomorrow.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow,
Online
congratulations.
college here. It's really hard. I only get like 10 hours of computer lab access and internet access.
And 1 hour is spent listening to us.
Yeah, well, no, I listen on the radio and on the phone.
What station do you listen on over there, Todd?
KXL 101.
That's what I wanted to hear you say, Todd.
Yeah,
And
rocking out of Portland, Oregon.
Todd, we got to run, but we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, keep Portland weird.
Okay.
Hang in there, Todd, all right? It'll be all right.
Hang in there, Todd. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That was Todd in Salem, Oregon. Andrew, but that is a very interesting topic to talk about, a discussion to talk about, is emotions. Because you get into rehab and they're all, they're all messed up.
Yeah, and I think that most people, even people that don't have problems with addiction or mental illness in our culture, have problems dealing with emotion. Our culture is trained really not to be emotional, except for maybe about sports.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably like
You were emotionally happy yesterday, so that's all I'll say.
Yeah, the Saints did manage to pull it out, but
let's go to Heather. Let's go to Sarah. I'm sorry. Let's go to Sarah in Santa Monica. And Sarah, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hello.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Sarah.
Good. I smoked a lot of pot in Portland.
Sounds like it. So you're pro-legal.
I just was calling to talk about your comment today on Facebook.
Yes.
I really appreciate how emotional people got about blowing pot smoke in animals' faces.
Yeah, it goes along with, I had a girlfriend who lived in Portland, and she actually wouldn't take antibiotics, but she would smoke pot.
There is so much weed in Oregon. And a lot of animals.
And so why did our story just
resonate so much to people? Why do you think people respond to that more than concerns about people smoking pot?
Or to you personally?
Well, I mean, personally to me, I think it's kind of funny. Of course, people take it seriously because they have a belief that animals are innocent, just like children. They don't have a choice. But just from my personal experience, because I used to grow marijuana, and this is many years ago, so hopefully I won't have anyone knocking at my door anytime soon, but we would have to work really, really hard to keep the animals out of our crops. We'd have to get chicken wire and dig holes and put nets on the top because it was like deer, possums, raccoons, bunny rabbits, insects. Every single animal in the forest is trying to get at it.
Oh,
so, and I've had animals eat my pot. It's just, cats, but...
I think I figured out why there's so much roadkill in Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all stoned.
They're all. That's actually really funny.
Yeah, it's true.
So, what did you have any crazy stories or with your?
Well, I mean, I did have two cats. One, they were kitties. One was named Dee Dee Sativa, and the other was named Bomber the Bomb.
Yeah, those are pothead names.
Yeah. And, well, the reason they had those, they didn't start out that way, but they were always getting into my stash. Always. I had to, they would jump, they would climb the curtains. They were little, addicts. And it just, it just makes me curious, and they had a choice. They always had a choice.
Right.
But, she actually raises a very interesting point. Okay, you take cigarette smoke, and we know, everybody knows I smoke. I leave the apartment to smoke. I don't smoke inside. And, the dog isn't getting to my stash of cigarettes. But pot, it's one of those drugs. You become a little irresponsible on it. You become a little lazy. You might forget where you put it. And if you do have animals, Andrew, they have easy access to it.
Well, actually, THC in the plant was created so the cows wouldn't eat it, sort of in buffalo and other native species, non-native species, because it makes them dizzy and really paranoid. So as a weed, it was very effective at growing in large plain areas without being eaten by large herd animals. So, like most things like humans with like a hot sauce, we take a pepper, which has, capsaicin, which is supposed to be there to stop you from eating it because it's spicy and it's hot. And, of course, we figure out how to boil it down so it burns your actual mouth. We've done the same thing with marijuana, where the THC levels, the other active ingredients, have gone from, about 12 times stronger than they were in the 60s.
Right.
So,
or even the 70s and the 80s.
And the 90s and today.
THC content now is just,
it's just going to get
pretty
stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. Obviously, there needs to be discussions on this. You're for legalizing it, Sarah?
I'm for legalizing and regulating.
Yeah.
I'm not like irresponsibly saying, just legalize it and everyone, let's all have, like a bong session. I'm saying let's it's not working to criminalize it. That's what I'm saying. And I also have my views on the nature of addiction and personal experience with alcoholism and addiction, and I think, you can't go around shutting all the liquor stores, down because people are going to become alcoholics, and it's pretty much the same thing with dispensaries. You're either going to do it or you're not.
Yeah, I mean, we know prohibition doesn't work as a culture. It never has. It didn't work for alcohol. It would never work for tobacco. It hasn't worked with marijuana. The war on drug has been a massive waste of money. But we've created a huge bureaucracy that lives on the budget of the war on drugs.
Yep.
And yet the war on drugs has very little to do with helping drug addicts. It only has to do with trying to get interdiction, which basically means trying to remove drugs from the system. And we know that there's an endless supply.
Sarah, thank you for the call, because, Andrew, we got to go to break.
Sure.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. It was Sarah in California. We're talking tonight about the legalization of marijuana, the consequences, not always the easy consequences. We're talking about what if your dog eats your weed? And the discussion continues on KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. Andrew's calling in from New Orleans. We got Buddy Totten as his stand-in. But Andrew, you're there, right?
Yeah.
So I got to tell you something funny. Every time, you're from, you lived in New Orleans for a long time, in Louisiana.
12 years.
But one of my biggest memories, and this should have showed me that I had alcoholism, that my favorite commercial when I was about 10 years old probably was the Bartles and James.
All right.
And if people aren't familiar, it was a wine cooler. It was one of the first wine coolers. And it was these two old guys that were in the commercials, Ed Bartles and something James. And it was Super Bowl time. And I remember the joke was they hired a blimp for the Super Bowl in Louisiana. But it was in the Superdome. And it's one of my favorite. Yes, anyways.
It's actually owned by Gallo Wine.
You see, I didn't know that.
Oh.
You learn something new from Andrew every day. This is the great thing about being friends with Andrew is my well of knowledge is increased. And if I were to smoke pot, I would lose that knowledge. So we have a bunch of calls coming, but I want to go to Marie because she's actually got a really interesting question, Andrew. So let's go to Marie in San Jose. Welcome back to KLEAN Radio, Marie.
Hi, Judah. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. My question was kind of, at this point, I'm not sure whether I'm really for or against legalization. I think I have to be a little bit more informed. But my question is kind of coming from the point of view of a recovering addict, because in my recovery, in the rooms, I've heard people not take alcohol seriously, and I've heard people not take prescription pills seriously, simply because they are illegal. They kind of have a more lackadaisical attitude about people addicted to those particular substances. And so I'm wondering if marijuana was legalized, if people would also take a similar attitude toward marijuana addiction as well. And maybe those people that might have gone into recovery from marijuana addiction, because it's legal, they don't really feel the need to because it's legal. Their attitude toward it wouldn't be as, they wouldn't feel more of a sense of urgency to go into recovery because their substance is legal.
You know, Marie, I think one of the most interesting points about that is that there's been a myth out there for so long, and it's still pretty prevalent even in the rooms, and that myth is that marijuana isn't addicting. And most people thought as a hallucinogen, because it was categorized as a hallucinogen, although we now found out that it has other properties such as a depressant and an amphetamine as well. But a lot of people thought that marijuana was just not addictive. And we've now found out over time that, yes, it actually is addictive, and not only just from a chemical standpoint, but also from a process addiction standpoint.
Well, Andrew, get into a little bit about the difference between a mental addiction sometimes and a physical addiction, because I think people can get a little confused by that.
Yeah, physical addiction is actually when your body becomes accustomed to the drug, and you build up tolerance. And then when you remove that drug from your system, stop using it, your body actually has a physical reaction of withdrawal. So that's physical addiction. So in alcohol, we'll see that with DTs, and with opiate addiction, we'll see it with quite dramatic flu-like symptoms and shaking and just a horrible withdrawal. So psychological addiction, you don't get the same thing, although we are starting to find what they call somaticized physical events. So which means that your mind actually makes your body feel certain things. So you might get anxious, you might have stomach aches, you might have muscle twinges and pains, even though you're only psychologically addicted. So there's the line between physical and psychological addiction that's kind of blurred as well. And some of these things obviously are both. You can be psychologically addicted and physically addicted to most of these drugs.
Right. You see, but Andrew, I could honestly say that a big thing you're going to hear from people saying right now is that marijuana is not addictive. Mm-hmm. You know, because we don't have full studies probably.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of studies, and there's a lot of differing information, and it's not, one thing with marijuana is that it's not as quickly addicting. Like alcohol, you can use it for quite a while without having serious consequences. At the same point, there's some people that can use it like alcohol just once and have very, very serious consequences.
Right.
I think in Colorado we saw the ERs fill up with a lot of people having panic attacks, thinking they were having heart attacks, a lot of paranoia.
That was me. I mean, marijuana did not fit my system. And
yeah, there's a lot of people that have a very negative reaction, even with very small amounts of marijuana.
Yeah,
sure.
And they don't know what's going on. They think they're fine, but really they're having full-blown anxiety attacks. The other thing is that different people have a different threshold to which they can actually have more serious psychiatric illnesses. So if you, say, have a potential to be bipolar, or you have a potential to have a drug-induced psychosis, you might be more likely to get one by smoking marijuana than if you didn't. And of course, there's no way to know that unless you actually do the drug.
So, Marie, did that help at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, we can't help fully, but here's a better question. How was your New Year's?
Well, speaking of pot, someone was smoking pot at one of my meetings on New Year's Eve.
Oh, what times?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that it won't mean horrible things for those in recovery, but
Marie, I don't see it as Marie. There's always going to be something, and if people that are sober and people that are in recovery, we all, these are all new climbs, and it's not just for people in recovery. Everybody out there, you don't think parents are going to be in Andrew? I mean, what about parents right now? What are they going through? A kid's 18. What's the law? The legal law? Age, I mean.
18, yeah.
It's-
In most states, 18 to 21.
Right, so it's 18 to 21. Heather, Marie, forget about, us. I mean, think about the parents right now and the quagmire that they might be facing when the kid says, I want to do pot. And the parents really don't have much, because if an 18-year-old could get it, he could be friends with a 16 or 17-year-old, and all of a sudden there really is no issue of getting it.
Right.
Right.
Well, when I was on on CNBC this week, and the question that I was first asked was, is marijuana a gateway drug? And I said, well, we've been trained as therapists to believe that marijuana is a gateway drug, but the truth of the matter is the real gateway drugs are alcohol and tobacco.
Right.
So,
It's exactly what I started with, cigarettes. Cigarettes, and it progressed to alcohol, and then
I
marijuana.
started with food, then cigarettes, yeah.
And I think we've become desensitized to the idea that people actually smoke cigarettes. I mean, it's a very aggressive way of using a drug, tobacco,
Right.
by smoking it. And so people have already been desensitized to the idea of ingesting a drug by smoking it. So marijuana now is just fitting into that same category of these three very potent drugs, nicotine, alcohol, and now THC and other substances within marijuana.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. That's Andrew Spanzik. Delmer Buddy Totten is his stand-in tonight. So give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. It's 800-222-5222. We're actually talking about, marijuana tonight. We're talking about the legalization. But we're also talking about the other stuff, Andrew, that I don't think people are going to talk about or think about. Because you actually raised a funny question today about blowing smoke in your dog or cat's face while you're getting high. And I was telling you the funny story. It wasn't funny at the time, but I got evicted from an apartment right in Hollywood, and I smoke. And when the cops came to evict me, they go, "You smoke in front of your dog?" They weren't worried about me getting evicted.
We see that with the homeless too. People will feed the homeless person's dog, but they won't feed the homeless person.
Yeah. So let's go to an interesting call. Let's go to Dan in Colorado. Dan, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hello. I just lost a set of customers, and I think that regular marijuana users that think this is a great panacea need to be aware of question 11E on the ATF form 4473 when you buy a firearm.
All right.
11E.
What do you lose customers for? We have
because I can no longer sell them ammunition
Oh.
to admit to regular marijuana use. They can't buy guns. The gun shops here in Colorado have been instructed by the ATF. If person answers question 11E, that they're a habitual user of marijuana, no gun sales for them. And I can't sell them ammunition. But the bottom line is, it's no one's talking about this. It's under Title 18.
You know what? I agree with you. I think we're going to see more things than that. I mean, just because marijuana becomes legal for recreational use or even medicinal use doesn't mean that an employer still can't discriminate against them. For example, alcohol is legal, but you're not allowed to show up to work drunk.
And it stays in your system.
Right. So you can actually not be using it actively, but they now have saliva tests that the LAPD just started using these now for
the
drug
swab
testing,
tests.
as they're talking about it.
Yeah.
It's a saliva swab test, and it can test for everything from benzodiazepines to cocaine to marijuana.
And they're actually putting in checkpoints, Andrew.
Yeah, so we're going to see more and more people's privacy actually being invaded with the legalization of more drugs, ironically.
So, Dan, are you for it or you're against it? Or are you just against it?
I'm going to lose a set of customers now because if they smell of marijuana, or a reasonable person, according to the ATF, should feel that you have a marijuana user by odor on them, and or they answer 11E affirmatively, saying they are a habitual user of marijuana, then the federal government still considers marijuana a controlled substance.
Dan, here's the thing. I really don't think you're losing. We're talking about potheads. I don't think they're the number one buyer of ammo and guns. I could be wrong.
A lot of them are libertarians here, man.
There you go.
We've got a lot of libertarians.
So, Dan, can you do me a favor? Dan, we have tons of calls lined up. Can you do me a favor? Can you call us back next week and tell us how it's going? I want you to be like our inside reporter in Colorado, and you tell us how your business is doing, how it's affecting you. If you could do that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I've notified the local news media, so we're going to see if they report on it and see what the reaction is.
But, Dan, exactly what you're talking about, and thanks for the call. Andrew, exactly what Dan is talking about is things that we're not, okay, so all of a sudden
nobody's put really any thought into this, the regulations and how it's going to happen, how it's going to affect different parts of society, how it interacts with laws that are currently on the books. And like you mentioned, federal law still preempts state law. So even if it's legal in Colorado, technically the DEA and the federal government can still come in and shut it all down. Now, the federal government's stance right now is to some degree to sit back and let the states experiment and see what happens. But if things get out of control, I imagine that we're going to see the DEA coming in and shutting a lot of these places down, like they did with medicinal marijuana in California and still do occasionally.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. That's Andrew Spanswick. Delmer Buddy Houghton is his stand-in tonight, and I just love saying that. Andrew
Hopefully
got
he might sit in. I hope you're letting him sit down.
Yeah, no,
I'm
sitting.
He's your sit-in.
I'm sitting.
And that would be great if I did make him stand. I was like,
standing
you
the whole
can't,
time.
You can't. Let's go to Mike in Portland. Welcome to Clean Radio, Mike.
Well, you guys, I like to read and listen to the radio, and I'm an old recovering alcoholic, drug addict, you name it, all of that business.
Yes.
Old, man, old. Yeah, 74.
Wow.
Nice.
And the thing that marijuana did for me, okay, number one, it ruined my lung capacity, worse than cigarettes ever thought of ruining it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out in studying this stuff that it puts more garbage in your lungs to cause lung cancer than cigarettes do.
Yeah. What do they say? What do they say, Andrew? One cigarette, one. What do they even call it? The thing.
Well, depending on the type
Joint.
of marijuana, it's generally 4 to 8 times as much tar.
Yeah.
So, it's and it's unfiltered. So that makes it even worse. Not that filtering is all that wonderful, but I mean, anybody that's smoked or seen a bong, you can just see the lining of tar and other toxins. And
that's another thing, Andrew, that annoys me is the bong namers. The people, they always have names for their bongs. It's just, I really could start a forum of hate.
They are phallic symbols.
Here's another gift.
Right.
Here's another gift that it gave me. Okay.
More money in your pocket?
No, it ruined my sleep pattern forever.
Right.
I still can't sleep without having nightmares to this day.
Mike, can you do me a favor? Are you on Facebook?
No, I'm not. But just a minute.
Yeah.
I'll write it down because I know people that are. Okay.
Yeah, because I want you to go to Facebook because I would, sign up, Mike. It's time. And, the war is over. Sign up, Mike. And go to go to facebook.com/Clean Radio because I would love for you to share this stuff because I think it's really interesting coming from somebody with 30 years sober. And I bet you when you got sober, it wasn't that easy to talk about this stuff. Because
think about what the long-term effects would be.
Thing about it is, I got straightened out in 1966.
Wow.
It's been a long go for me, but aside from dead friends that OD'd and all of that stuff that I saw, I didn't enjoy it. And one of them that stabbed his father to death.
Wow.
When he was loaded. But the thing about it is that I keep hearing this stuff coming over the radio, and I'm screaming on the inside. I'm saying, please don't.
Yeah.
Don't make it soma.
Right. Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for the call. Andrew, I can't think of a better,
Well, it's interesting. We've been so, like I've mentioned several times tonight, we've been so desensitized to, tobacco. Yet we know 1 out of every 2 people that smoke tobacco will die of a smoking-related illness.
Right, exactly.
So, I'm laughing, by the way, because somebody just texted me the name of their bong. So it's great that people are out there listening and texting me their bong names. But we're running. Let's go to Kevin in Washington. Oh shoot! Excuse me. I dropped Kevin. Let's go to Sarah in Canoga Park. Welcome to Clean Radio, Sarah.
Yes, hi. I'm just pulling over right now. So
Okay.
bear with me because I'm on my car phone. I'm going to get back onto the regular.
Okay.
We don't want people dying on their
Yes.
cell phone.
No.
Which is a whole other addiction, Andrew.
A whole other process addiction.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
So, Sarah, you called about how to deal with caffeine addiction?
Yes, I wanted to know if there's any support groups.
Yeah, stop drinking
I
it.
was off of it for 3.5 years, and then I took one 8-ounce cup, and that's
Andrew, that's a great question.
There's been several studies done by universities that were looking specifically at caffeine addiction, and they found that use of a support group to get off of caffeine helped. And there were also some medications that were helpful. what they found that was so surprising was the relapse rate. Once people got out of the study, the vast majority went back to drinking excessive amounts of caffeine almost right away.
A good idea, by the way, is not to go to Starbucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so the point is, you guys know of any support groups in Los Angeles?
I'll tell you what, Sarah, do me a favor. Go to KLEAN Radio. Are you on Facebook by any chance?
No.
Okay. Email me, Judah, Judah, at KLEANcenter.com. And if you send me an email asking
wait. Judah at?
KLEAN, KLEAN, Center.
KLEIN?
KLEAN. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to put you on hold, Sarah, and they're going to give you the email address. And I accidentally dropped her. It's, again, I'm having problems with drop and hold. Andrew, so it's Judah, Judah, at KLEANcenter.com, or go to us at KLEANradio.com. We're going to put that information up, Andrew. She has a good question.
Yeah, or Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio.
Yes. And the reason we say this is we actually do respond to people because we get tons of questions from people during the week. We know this is one of the hardest things to talk about. Tonight we have a bit of more levity with the pot stuff, as they call it. But let's go to Andrew. We got an unknown. Let's go to unknown. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I had a couple of questions here.
Go for it.
One, I heard that there is a kind of marijuana that will act as a bactericide.
As a what?
It kills bacteria.
No, actually, what's going on? There's an actual. I don't know if this is the same thing that you were hearing, but there's a type of fungus that actually grows in marijuana that's actually toxic, and to get rid of it, you have to heat it under a light to just below vaporization level. And people are actually getting a toxic reaction to smoking this particular type of marijuana that was laced with fungus. So this is another one of these problems with regulations. People are just growing this stuff in their basements and in their houses and out in the woods. And a lot of marijuana is still, people use pesticides that are not good for you. I mean, a lot of marijuana that comes out of Mexico still is covered in paraquat, which is a type of pesticide that actually causes cancer. We know that. They found DDT on marijuana coming out of Mexico. And then marijuana grown in the States is also covered in pesticides as well, because in fungicides, because people obviously want to keep their crops, and it's a difficult crop to grow in large quantities if the weather is moist at all.
And thanks for the call. Andrew, we got to take some calls very quickly. If you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're talking about the legalization tonight. We're going to talk about this next week again. Andrew will be in studio. We're going to have a really fun, lively debate. Maybe we'll have that pot doctor, Andrew, that we had in the past. The doctor she goes by. I can't remember her last name. But we'll get her in. You guys had a good debate last time. But let's go to Barbara in Glendale.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to KLEAN Radio, Barbara. So you don't believe pot is addictive?
No, of course it isn't.
Oh, really?
It never was, and it never will be.
Or else
and
what?
Whether it's legalized or it's not really is not an important point in my own opinion.
But 1 second. I didn't hear the first thing. Why isn't it addictive?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
You're saying that pot is not addictive.
Oh, exactly. No, I don't believe ever.
Right.
Ever. Well,
I'll tell you what, Andrew. I'll tell you what, Barbara.
but I have something else I want to tell you.
Go for it.
This is the greatest show, and I haven't missed one for a year. And I'm so glad. You guys just started about 6 months ago.
Right? No, on this station we've been on about a year.
Well, it's a wonderful show, and you're both just superb. And I love
I'm better, though. That's Judah. But Andrew's pretty good, too.
James and Todd and the lady on the East Coast. Anyway, let's get back quickly because our time is short.
Okay.
It's very short.
Are you smoking right now? That's what I want to know first.
Are you kidding me? I don't even know where to go to buy it.
Well, soon you will, Barbara, and that's part of the question.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. Barbara,
corner near you.
First part of the show, sweetie.
Barbara, are you on Facebook?
Are you kidding me? I'm too private a person. I don't do any of those electronical things.
I got to tell you something, Barbara. You are a trip, and we're going to be discussing this next week again. And please call back anytime you want. You're always welcome here at KLEAN Radio. Thank you for supporting us.
Well, you're very welcome.
Happy
New Year, too.
Happy New Year to you, Barbara. And Andrew, that wasn't either of our mothers. So let's go to Kevin. He's been waiting on hold. We got Kevin in Washington. Go for it, Kevin.
Yes, sir. I'm a former law enforcement officer, retired last year on just about 40 years in 3 states, Hawaii to California, and finally up here in the state of Washington. I've dealt with drugs of all levels and schedules and so forth, been to the DEA courses on recognition and so on. As a layperson still, I don't know the effects and detrimental health effects, long-term and whatnot, but I equate pot to be equivalent in its negative effects health-wise, no worse on a level than pot. You have cirrhosis of the liver.
You mean than alcohol? Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Alcohol kills brain cells. Cirrhosis of the liver can occur. People are addicted. They can't get off booze. They try to, and they have the shakes. They're in rehab. I know people in rehab for booze, for cocaine, heroin, you name it. But
you know what? You're absolutely right. We know that the most dangerous drug out there is tobacco. That kills more people than anyone in terms of actual health risk. And we know that alcohol is number 2, and it actually creates more accidents and more secondary deaths to other people, although secondhand smoke's killed a lot of people as well. So, marijuana is just another, a lot of people that are against the legalization of marijuana are saying we're just adding another drug into that category of socially accepted drugs that's going to have externalities or secondary effects on society. The question is, what is the cost of not legalizing it? And that's been the real problem. Is that anybody, and I'm sure you've noticed as a law enforcement official, that anybody that wants to get marijuana pretty much can. The ability of the police to stop the importation or the growth or the distribution and sales of marijuana has been pretty hopeless. So the question is, how does a society deal with something that so many people want and so many people want to get? And how do you take the criminal element out of it? And then if you're going to tax it and regulate it, how are you going to do that? And then what are you going to do with that tax money to work with the people and the consequences from damage that happens from people smoking pot?
You get all that, Kevin?
Sir, yes, sir. I just wish they would. I don't find it any harsher as far as mind-altering or behavior. I noticed people were impaired in their ability to drive safely was equal as those that just had a joint or a portion of a joint or had some mixed drinks. I drink moderately. I don't smoke pot or tobacco. I drink moderately. If I start drinking heavily, I don't get behind the wheel. Same with pot. If you toke too many hits on a joint.
But Kevin, again, you're raising a great point, and this is something we're talking about, and this is something Andrew is extremely passionate about. And I love the interview. If you missed it, go to Kudlow. Or go to our Facebook.com page. Go to Facebook.com/Clean Radio. Andrew was actually on Larry Kudlow the other night, and they were talking about this. And what Andrew is saying, and Kevin, thanks for the call. What Andrew is actually talking about, and Andrew, I don't want to speak for you, but is you're basically saying they've legalized this, but they've opened the floodgates without really doing their due diligence first.
Yeah, I think that, clearly if a drug is so commonplace and so easily and readily available and spending billions of dollars a year on fighting it from a legal standpoint doesn't work, then you have to look at different ways of dealing with it. And so what's going on right now is really a public health model where we're legalizing it, and then we're supposed to be putting in place regulations to deal with the consequences of it being legal.
Let's try to get a couple of quick calls, Andrew. Let's go to Patrick in Glendale. Welcome to Clean Radio, Patrick.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey, Patrick.
I'm good. I've owned several medical marijuana dispensaries, and I'm a regular marijuana user, and I actually fought in federal court for the religious right to use marijuana. So marijuana is a substance that's been with human beings for thousands of years. The use of it, has gone back literally thousands of years, proven, and there's not one recorded medical death due to marijuana. So this
that's
absolutely not one medical death recorded to marijuana.
Alcohol has been with us just longer.
Absolutely not. It has not. I hate to tell you, hemp and marijuana have been around for thousands of years. You can look in ancient Chinese history where they'll have hemp containers in burial grounds.
Okay, well, it's sort of a Pyrrhic victory here either way because they've both been around for a hell of a long time. So certainly,
but the key is that marijuana,
civilization's been operating, and as to your issue with marijuana, I think alcohol is worse of a drug than marijuana. I think that the consequences of alcohol are much worse. But prohibition didn't work in America, so we've given up on that concept.
Now either.
Well, and that's why I'm pro legalization and pro regulation of marijuana.
Patrick, let me ask you a question. What if somebody were to say to you, Patrick, what if somebody would say to you, you should be taxed, but your tax dollars for the marijuana should be going to mental health and, preparing to help people that might get addicted to it? Would you be pro that?
I'd be pro anything that could help people, but the problem there that lies in is that, listen, if you're going to tax something to quote unquote to help people that are on it, it doesn't make any sense. What you really need to do right now is you need to repeal the laws, let the people out of prison that are in prison for this drug.
Right, Patrick. Patrick, listen, you're welcome to call back anytime, but we literally have 2 minutes left.
But I just want to just real quick, literally 0 deaths due to marijuana.
We got that, Andrew. That was 0 deaths. But here's the thing, Andrew. How do you know?
Due to marijuana, look, people have died from toxic ingestion of hashish.
Yeah.
Those are all documented cases. The reality is that not nearly as many people die from marijuana as other drugs. It is a pretty safe drug in terms of that. What it is, though, is extremely damaging to you, both in the short term and the long term.
Okay, let's go to one last call. I'm sorry. Let's go to Heather. Heather, you got 30 seconds. I didn't want to leave you out. You're a regular, so just what is your opinion on this, Heather, in Vermont?
Yeah. Well, my opinion is it should be regulated. It should be taxed. It should be earmarked to treat the people who are on it. And but my issue is if they tax it too much, then people will go underground anyway because they won't want to pay higher prices for stuff being taxed.
Okay, Heather, we got to run, so thanks for the input. We'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Yep.
Andrew, this was quite the lively discussion that started with you and I talking to each other about some funny Facebook posts and you coming up with the idea. And it was a great show.
Yeah, I'm glad that I managed to get on the air, even though I'm stuck in New Orleans, and I will go peer out the window to everybody getting drunk.
And I think you should. We should definitely thank Delmer. We should definitely thank Delmer Buddy Totten for being your sit-in tonight, and you did offer some good stuff, buds.
Oh, thanks, man.
And
my
Andrew, have a
it's
safe.
Not Bud after marijuana, right? That's not his nickname, right?
Yeah, no, named after my godfather, and he's not named after marijuana.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other issue of getting on a plane. By the way, with the pilots. I don't even want to let you think about that as you're about to fly, Andrew.
Man. Great.
But I know you have an early morning flight. Fly safe.
Anyway,
sleep well tonight.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, Andrew.
And we will talk to you later.
See you back home.
And, buddy, I want to thank you again. I want to thank everybody out there. Anybody that just tuned in. We had some of the best calls we've ever had tonight. We're going to have this discussion next week. We're going to continue it with some really great guests that I don't know who they are yet. But I want to thank Steve, Maisa, all our family, all our listeners out there. The discussion continues at KLEANradio.com.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.